Good morning, church family. I'm just really excited to be here this morning just for the opportunity to share with you something that is so near and dear to my heart. A number of years ago, Starting Point began in the walls of my classroom. I teach English as a second language to local immigrants and refugees new here to the greater Sacramento region. And there were two students in particular who really opened up their lives to me. They shared about their stories about life in their war-torn country of Afghanistan and their struggles here in the United States as they rebuilt their lives. And so these stories really impacted me in tremendous ways. I couldn't get these stories out of my head and my heart and felt like I had to do something about it. So from these stories of perseverance, strength, hope, and humanity, I formed Starting Point for Refugee Children with the mission to come alongside refugee children from all over the nation to support them as they begin their new lives in the region. And we do this in two ways. We provide basic necessities to support their resettlement, to support their education, and things like that. And we also provide programs to help them blossom and thrive. And so since our launch in 2017, our voluntary-run organization has been able to help over 260 families and 3,500 children in these past 4 years. And instead of telling you more in detail about what we do, I'd like to show you our slideshow so you can get a better idea of what we do and who we serve. So that's just a glimpse into what we do into the community as we go out into their community parks, their apartment complexes, serving in different ways. And now things have changed. As you all may have seen on August 15th, the collapse of Afghanistan, I still have those horrific images in my mind of people fleeing during this mass exodus. And those arrivals, those people who evacuated are approaching and coming to our area. In fact, for our organization, we've seen an increase of needs among families by 1,000%. We have a huge population here. In the past 2 months, we've received over 2,500 families, and we're expecting an additional 5,000 to come in the months to come. And we have such a huge population here. In fact, the Art and Arcade area has the highest population of Afghans in the United States. Just right here, a couple of miles away, we just have the most concentrated number of Afghans. And because of this, the Afghans have a new name for Sacramento. They call it Shari Now. Shari Now means in their language, the new city, because they know that they've left their old country of Afghanistan. They're coming here to the Sacramento region, and they're establishing themselves. They're making new memories and pursuing after their dreams in their new city. These evacuees who come have different needs, greater needs than the ones who've come before them during the past 4 years. There's 3 great needs in particular. One is housing, because there's a lack of affordable housing here in the area. So a lot of them are being sent to hotels to live for like 20, 30, 40 days until an apartment unit opens up. In addition to housing, there is also a lot of food insecurity. Although they qualify for food stamps, because agencies are so inundated, they have to wait at times 30 or 40 days before they are able to get food stamps. And in addition to this, as you saw on TV, a lot of them fled with just a small backpack or literally the clothing on their backs. So they don't have much here when they first arrive. So what we've been able to do is just last weekend, we were able to have a warm clothing event where we were able to pass out 350 winter coats in addition to warm clothing, food, toys, and other things. And I just want to thank you for your involvement. Your church was very generous in providing a lot of the coats for us. So we were able to meet this very basic need and help our families be warm their very first winter here. So I thank you for that, church. So what I just showed you is what people know about Starting Point, what they see on social media, what they see us do out in the community, what's been highlighted in the news or magazine articles, newspaper articles. But today what I'd like to share with you is how God has been working quietly behind the scenes for the last 4 years. It's really been a journey of faith for me as I've seen the ups and downs of the past 4 years and the challenges of running a nonprofit organization. And so today I'd like to share with you how God has been working behind the scenes and the awesome things he's been doing through and in Starting Point. One verse that comes to mind is Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. It's a familiar verse that we all know of. And today I'd like to share with you the translation from the Good Living Translation. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Never rely on what you think you know. Remember the Lord in everything you do, and he will show you the right way." Okay? Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Never rely on what you think you know. Remember the Lord in everything you do, and he will show you the right way. You know, this verse has been a major part of my Christian faith for a number of decades, but it has meant so much more to me in the past 4 years as I've led Starting Point. And I'd like to show you how these verses have really impacted my life and the direction that my organization has gone through. And I'm going to share some stories with you that I've never shared before publicly, so I'm really excited to show you how God has really been faithful in so many ways. So as I mentioned, Starting Point launched in 2017. It was actually June 20th, World Refugee Day to be exact. And we were already planning our very first event. We wanted to support refugee children's education by providing backpacks filled with school supplies, uniforms, and things like that. So we were all prepared for our event that was going to happen in 4 weeks. We had the backpacks, we had volunteers, we had a venue all ready to go. But as we know, things don't always happen the way we plan. 10 days before our event, our venue changed their mind. They decided that they didn't want to allow us to participate at their site, and they pulled out. Well, I tell you, I was really surprised by this, and I hung up the phone, in surprise, and I thought, Lord, I am believing that you're going to bring us to a better place to serve for our first event. And I prayed and I said, okay, our event is in 10 days. Provide a place for us. But if you don't mind, could you tell me kind of quickly, because it's coming up in like a week and a half, right? And so I waited. And after a couple of days, we couldn't find any location to serve the 100 children that we had been targeting, had been focusing on. So out of desperation, I reached out to one of my students and I told him about the situation and if he could help us find a location in a particular area that we were targeting. He said, let me get back to you about that. And so the following day, he called me and he said, I found a place for you. They're ready for you to come. They have tables for you. And by the way, it's at a masjid, which is a mosque. And I hung up the phone thinking, honestly, that is the last place I thought I would ever serve at, especially for our first event. But at that moment, it made perfect sense to me, and I thought, okay, Lord, that makes sense that you want me to serve these Muslims at their place of worship for our very first event. Let's go for it. But when I shared this with my volunteers, some of them had decided to pull out because they said, well, if you're going to be serving there, then we don't want to have to do anything with it. And I was really shocked by that, and I started having some doubt about, I'm pretty sure this is what God wants me to do, but I'm not really sure now because of what these people have said. So I asked for confirmation. I said, God, give me some confirmation. Show me that this is where you want me to go and want me to serve at. So I proceeded to prepare for our event. I was at the dollar store. I happened to be in the book aisle. And I thought, I wish I had thought about including books in our backpacks. That would have been a great way to support our kids' desire to learn English. But because there was a lack of time and I had no funding, I thought I will just keep that idea for the following year. Hours later, I was at home and I received a text. And the text was from a person who said, hey, Vicki, I have 5 boxes of brand new books. Can you use them? And I certainly jumped on the chance and I told her, oh my gosh, your text is so timely, is exactly what we need. And I took that as confirmation from God to proceed with our plans. I was so touched and so happy. But being human, 2 days later, I started doubting once again. I thought, Lord, are you really sure you want me to go to this mosque to serve? I'm really not sure. This is our first event. We're only 4 weeks old. Please tell me, give me some more confirmation. And then 2 days before our event, I realized that we were really lacking in particular sizes of uniforms for our older girls. And I just didn't have the time to go pick up more uniforms. But the day before our event, on our doorstep, believe it or not, I found uniforms on our doorstep in this exact number, size, and color that we needed. And I was just amazed. And once again, I took that as confirmation from God to move forward. It was really an amazing experience just to receive God's confirmation in this way. And it really, after the event, I was really able to see that the mosque was a perfect place for us to build trust. And in the past 2 years, we've spent more time drinking tea with our families, making a connection, being invited to celebrations, going to hospitals to welcome their new babies. And so looking back, I really see that serving at the mosque was the first place that we had to go to, that God was leading us to build trust with our families. And so you can see in the books and uniform slide that, go one more back. Yeah, so you can see the books and the uniforms right there that we were able to provide to 100 children at the mosque just a month after we had first launched. So when I share this with you, once again, I think of Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, which says, Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Never rely on what you think you know. Remember the Lord in everything you do, and he will show you the right way. As we can see how God worked, he showed me the right way. Well, that's what we did for the first 2 years, and then COVID hit. COVID hit. And I was just really overwhelmed. I still remember that Thursday when everything shut down in our area, and I was thinking, oh, Lord, I'm just feeling really anxious with all the empty shelves and with everyone being stressed. I was really feeling that in my life. And I wanted to just focus on my family during that time. But God really convicted me through a devotional that I watched. It was by Rick Warren from Saddleback Church. And he began to talk about the bubonic plague. And he said that during that time, as people fled from the city because there was a lot of death, during that time as people fled, the Christians came in. They were the ones who met people's needs, who nursed them, and through that love and compassion that they showed ill people, it brought the birth of the hospital as we know it today, and it brought conversion to the Roman Empire and brought Christianity to many people's lives. And so Rick Warren challenged listeners and said, well, during this present pandemic, how are you going to respond? Are you going to respond in faith or in fear? And I listened to that. It was a Saturday night, and I just kind of thought, okay. The following day was my church's very first online service. And of course, what did my pastor preach on? He preached on the same exact thing. He talked about the bubonic plague, how Christians responded in faith and in faith rather than in fear. And once again, I was challenged and convicted to look at my own response during this time and think about what I was going to do. Well, the next day on Monday, I was alone at home and I said, God, if I call myself an advocate for refugees, then now is the time for me to step it up. I'm not going to retreat back in fear, but I'm going to step forward in faith and meet their needs during this crucial time. And I decided at the time, I'm going to provide food for them because they need food. They're lacking food. How am I going to do it? I have no idea how I'm going to do a food drive for my families when store shelves are emptying and there's limits on the number of things you can purchase. But I'm going to move forward and believe that somehow I'll be able to provide food for our families. That was a Monday. The next day, Tuesday, I received an email from an organization downtown, and they said, in the light of everything that's happening, Vicki, what can we do to support your organization during this pandemic? And I just kind of smiled. I responded and said, your email is so timely. Please throw me a food drive. And they did. And so from that just step of faith and that connection with this organization, we began to distribute 2 tons of food to families throughout the Sacramento region. We provided doorstep deliveries to drop off food items, and then a couple of months later, a lot of our families reached out to us because they got COVID and weren't able to go out. And without any friends or families, because they were new to the United States, they didn't have any friends or family members here, they had no way of getting food. So they reached out to us and said, could you provide us some food for us? Because we can't go out. We don't know anyone. We have no way of getting any food. So in addition to that, we were able to help in this very specific need to provide food for those who are stuck at home. And you can see in the next slide what we did, doorstep deliveries to many, many different refugees, families, homes in their area. So once again, I'm reminded that to trust in the Lord with all your heart, never rely on what you think you know. Remember the Lord in everything you do, and he will show you the right way, just as God showed me the right way. So that was what happened last year when COVID hit. But today I'd like to share with you and end with what has been happening recently. As you know, on August 12th, Afghanistan collapsed, and all of those families started evacuating. Here's two families that are evacuee families. They came here after a long journey of leaving Kabul, being in a military camp for a number of weeks, then being here in the United States in another military camp, and finally establishing themselves here. So now we're starting to focus on these families. And I tell you, over the past 4 years, I've really looked at how our organization started, because what I failed to mention in the beginning is that I formed the organization in just 8 weeks, because from my student stories, I was so deeply impacted by them. I had to do something. And even though I had no nonprofit experience, no definite plans, no funding at all, we went with it. We formed the organization in 8 short weeks and took off, serving so many in the area. During these past 4 years, I've often stepped back and thought, what was causing that urgency in my heart to form an organization in just 8 weeks? It's really unheard of. But what I knew was that there was a driving factor in my heart that was pushing me to move forward, to get going. And I tell you, God revealed to me why on August 12th. It was a Thursday. I was at home just in the living room, not thinking about my organization, when I heard from God, and he spoke to me so clearly and so gently, as he often does. He said, the reason why there was an urgency for you to establish a nonprofit organization so quickly is because I wanted you to have something formed and established for what is to come. And right when I heard that, there was like a sudden peace that came over me. It made sense. And it made even more sense 3 days later when Afghanistan collapsed. And I stood there watching, and I thought, oh, Lord, this is why there was such an urgency in my heart 4 years ago, because you wanted me to have something formed and established for this. And it made everything make sense at that one moment. And so, church family, I just really thank you for just being a part of our organization at this moment, because as God has revealed to me, he has preparing us for these past 4 years for this exact moment in time. If we had formed a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we would not be prepared, because right now we are such in a sweet spot. And so it's because of organizations, businesses, churches like yours that have come alongside us, is that we're able to make such an impact in the area. So I send you all just a heartfelt thanks to each and every one of you for your partnership and coming alongside these refugee families, providing a basic need and welcoming them to the United States. I thank you so much.